So a few years ago, about 6 years ago, we took a step back and said, actually, we say we're one of the premier peacebuilding organisations in the UK and internationally, but we don't really have a definition of peace and peacebuilding. Should we not get one? And so we did get one. We decided, we had a look at ourselves, and others have read a lot, and we came up with some good definitions, I think. And we picked up on this idea of positive peace, which we certainly didn't invent. So if people aren't familiar with this difference between negative peace and positive peace, put simply, negative peace is when people stop fighting, but issues have not been resolved. A very familiar situation, both in the family and at every larger level. Positive peace, on the other hand, which is what we aspire to help people achieve in international work, we define like this: when people are anticipating and managing conflicts without violence. So fundamental to development is conflict. And this is another really important point. I don't really see how you can have development, which is transformation, without differences of opinion. And differences of opinion are conflict. Now, they're not necessarily violent conflict, and they're not necessarily unresolvable, although sometimes they seem to be. Even if there's a change that's being proposed or is happening, which can be presented as not a zero-sum change, it is quite typical for those who are incumbent beneficiaries of a situation, in the political economy of the situation, to see their positions under threat, and therefore to be defensive or even offensive. So change is inherently conflictual, is absolutely critical, and development is, I think, all about change. If it means anything, it means change. So peace and development, are they connected? Absolutely. Because conflict and development are absolutely connected. You cannot have development without conflict. What we'd like to see is that you can have development without violent conflict. One of the great things about the English and Latin languages is that you can have that sentence. I was giving a seminar in, well, not in Arabic, but with Arabic speakers a few years ago, and I was making the same point, and someone in the tea break said to me, unfortunately, that didn't really come across, because there is no word in Arabic like conflict, which covers the idea of violent conflict and differences. But certainly we can do that in English. So we say positive peace is when people have the capacity and the possibilities of anticipating, seeing ahead and doing something to head off conflicts if possible, but certainly avoiding violence, and engaging in inclusive, successful social change processes that improve the quality of life and are equitable. I think I would add in, well, inclusive, I guess the word is in there. So positive peace is about progress. It's about progress without violence. And then that's the idea of positive peace, which is out there in the literature. We added two things in our own particular definition, which is that this is happening without compromising the ability of continuing to do so in the future. So let's make sure it's a sustainable peace. Let's not buy our peace today at the expense of the peace of our children and grandchildren. And then the second thing, which you may not be able to see because it's probably behind the table, is or compromising the possibility of others to do so. So one might say that according to this definition, those of us who are lucky enough to be living in the United Kingdom are living in a situation where there's quite a high degree of positive peace. We don't have a lot of fighting in this country over our differences. We have political systems at most levels which allow us to anticipate and manage conflicts without violence. We disagree, but we find ways to work together. So we're very lucky if we're living in this country right now. But one could argue, and I do argue, that we are living the way we do in this country on the backs of people who don't have that positive peace. Therefore, we're sort of breaking the rule of this definition of positive peace, which is that our peace in the UK is at the expense of people's conflict or lack of peace elsewhere. So one can think about this at many levels in an interconnected way. Peace is nevertheless very abstract. Everyone likes it, or most people do. Most people who fight say they're fighting for peace. But how does one therefore sort of recognise? Oh, and by the way, I don't see that as a utopian idea. I see it as more of an aspirational idea, something one can work towards as a vision of better. Development is about deciding what you think is better, isn't it? And for us, that's better. I mean, people are doing what I had on that last slide. And so we say that in order, a way to recognize, so this is how we do our analysis in our programs, in order to recognize how a particular set of people's situations, a situation is in terms of progress towards that vision of peace. We have these 5 areas we look at, and they're very familiar to anyone who's familiar with the development sector. We talk about power, or governance, you might say. It's about how people are led, how they interrelate, how they belong, relationships. It's about the sort of the fabric of society, how decisions are made, who has the right to have a voice, who is listened to. When people have power, how do they wield it? How do they get removed from power? Is it done peacefully? All that stuff. So, you know, all the good governance stuff is critical for peace. It's no surprise, I'm sure. We tried, when we did this exercise, to not use too many, we tried to avoid, if possible, some of the sort of abstract Latinate words. So rather than security, rather than governance, we put power. Our rule of thumb was, what would my mum understand the language? Not mine, but her mum. We had safety instead of security. So are people safe from harm? Is everybody equally able to keep themselves or be kept safe from harm, all sorts of different kinds of harms? We said the other one is about the law. I suppose justice is the word. Is the law and the legal process both formal and informal? Is it applied and received well? Is it fair? Is it effective? Is it predictable? I think it's tremendously important in terms of the rule of law. Even when the rule of law is, even when justice is not fair, then at least if I know what's going to happen to me if I do that thing, it's a good start. And then a fourth one is well-being, and that's a lot of the sort of normal development stuff, tremendously important for peace, people's well-being. Is people's mental and physical well-being maintained, and can they legitimately aspire to improve it? Talking about education, health, living environment, psychosocial, etc. And then the one at the bottom, which again people may not be able to read, is the economic stuff, income and assets, keeping the most important till last, perhaps, I don't know. We said in the economy what's critical for peace building is that equitably there is access to economic opportunity, and that to the degree to which it's not fair, because it never is completely fair, or doesn't seem so, that unfairness should not be easily ascribable to issues of identity. So it's not easy for me to say the reason I didn't get that job is because I'm this ethnicity or from this part of the country, or I'm a man or a woman or young or old or whatever. But this idea of fairness is absolutely critical to all of these, actually. And we said, of course, that these things are completely interlocking. That's about the extent of my PowerPoint abilities. We had a lot of discussion about which one of these is central. You can imagine there's a lot of argument that power is central, but when we tried putting any of the other ones central, that also worked as well. It seems like fundamentally a society which is not moving forward on all of these is not moving in the direction of peace and peace building.